Good evening. How are you? Well, I'm doing a sit and talk this evening because of the rains and the heat and the thunder and the lightning. Other than that, there's no reason not to be outside. And in fact, I do walk in that weather, but I can't navigate a conversation with a phone. I'm becoming electrified as the lightning finds me. I don't think that's possible, but I guess it's conceivable, as I just did. Let's talk about a couple of the people saying really stupid things about the two issues that are going to grab the nation on Monday. One is we have Zelensky coming after the meeting between Putin and Trump, which was a disaster, at least from the American standpoint. All of his braggadocio about how he's going to stand up to Putin, and he didn't at all. And I think that's their arrangement. I think he still owes, going back to at least 2015, Putin for his current position and perhaps remaining silent and keeping tapes on whatever. But he's got this guy by the cojones, and he just asked how high to jump, not whether or not he should jump. And then we have Zelensky, and after the performance by our vice president, very bad form, and the president attacking him, including how he dressed and why didn't you say thank you and stuff like that. So the NATO members are coming, as well as the head of NATO, to give ballast, if you will, to the unequal pressure that we can expect from Trump if Zelensky were to come alone. The second thing that's going to happen is going to be talk about the Epstein matter. We return to what may be the real matter when we're trying to avoid talking about it, so we talk about something else, like how do we settle the war in Ukraine. Now, in this category, let's start with that. Marco Rubio, who is our Secretary of State, I would wager that he's in the bottom 1% of all secretaries of state we've had, and perhaps in the world. And I say this because he addressed specifically the situation of the meeting between Zelensky and the White House, and how it compares to what reception Putin had. And so his summary remark was that both sides have to give a little, meaning territory. Now let's stop the music here. Putin invaded and took the territory that plainly belonged to Ukraine, indeed violating an earlier security agreement for which they gave up certain weapons that they had to be secure against such invasions. And he's saying both sides should give up a little. So what is the implication of a position when a neighboring nation state marches across the boundaries and takes over a section, say Crimea, as did happen? And the answer is, well, possession's 9/10 of the law. He got it, so maybe he can sit down and bargain about whether he gets to keep it or not. When you can't find a reason other than Putin's notion of restoring, I think, a Stalin-esque document, the old Soviet sense. I heard somebody talk about referring to old oligarchs of the early Russian era. That's not who Putin is. I mean, we have experts in foreign affairs, and they don't even know the right people to talk about. You talk about Lenin, you talk about Stalin. That's the kind of Soviet Union he's seeking, and he's wanted it that way since East Berlin was no longer East Berlin. And so this is I don't know if it's just ignorance or it's a party line, and they figure that we Americans don't read the papers. And if you'll notice, and this hasn't happened for a long time, the center of our newspapers are getting more and more filled with foreign stories. And I point that out because people who advertise don't advertise on those pages because they figure people don't read them, but I think they are now. And these stories signal, I think, it's kind of the mist of conflict and satisfying situations by being at impasse and then just doing it by power, which is what Putin did with Ukraine. So that's one example. Another one, looking domestically, if you will, the notion of Trump's martial law and why none of our experts ever talk about it as martial law. They just, there are all these reasons. And okay, let's consider one. A Sunday host, the host of the show, and I'm not going to say their name, in part because I'm not sure I can remember which host it was, but in response to a protestation about the fact of soldiers who don't know anything about law enforcement or crowd control or anything else like that, or know anything about DC, and they're coming from elsewhere, is wrong. They're not wanted. They should leave, and by right they should leave. And so the host said, but there is a document that says they have authority to do this. And rightly so, the person who was sitting there, probably aghast, but nevertheless maintained his composure, said, whoa, this is not an emergency. There's nothing that indicates this is an emergency. Just saying it doesn't make it an emergency. This kind of fiat is what dictators do. And I just wish we would finally embrace the fact that Trump thinks he's a dictator. The law doesn't apply. And the only person I've heard say this, who was a prominent elected official, was Newsom, the governor of California. And I know people are wrestling with the fact of who should lead, but he's putting himself out there. He's leading. We see the same thing going on in Illinois. The governor there, Pritzker, is involved. I think we're going to see it in Pennsylvania. We need it, and we need it now. So to send troops to D.C. When there is no emergency is martial law. It's illegal, it's unjustified, and it's not being tested in court the way it should. And I don't know why the mayor doesn't do that, because you can't, I've said it, and I know it's obvious, you can't win a fight if you don't throw a punch. And you can't just sit there and let them pummel you. I mean, there are people like that, I guess, but it's not my brand. And then there's this overriding thing. I mean, there are all these things that come together. Trump using racial profiling to deport migrants without investigating whether or not they are offenders, without what we call due process, which is basically fundamental fair procedures, not outcome determinative. You know, I don't make up stuff to say that I can do what I'm doing, which is what Trump does. And so this is a troubling aspect as well, because now you have Trump targeting Latinos, Hispanics. Now you have him going after blacks. We have him with Roe v. Wade by the Supreme Court, with a major assault against women. Nobody is safe, and nobody seems to get this. And you know, we talk about how did Germany not let this happen and not do anything? Exactly the way we are. And the difference so far is that the governor of California hasn't been run over by a car, and his tea hasn't been poisoned, because that's how Putin works, and this is how Trump thinks. Trump thinks he can do a dance, and in the end, Putin will get what he wants, which is more territory, because we won't support the Ukraine itself. We won't support Zelensky, and so then it'll be taken over. Maybe not. These guys thought this was going to be a 2-day war 3 years ago, so we have that. And then the last, I think this is the last one in my mind, but the last one I'm interested in that I think shows this is the Epstein-Maxwell case. She was convicted of 5 of the 6 counts that she was charged with by the federal government in the Southern District of New York. The most serious was recruiting and enticing Carolyn, which was the name of one of these victims, to engage in sex acts with Epstein. And get this was between 2001 and 2004. Now, she could have been sentenced maximum on this one very serious count of 40 years. She was sentenced to 20 years, and that's what she's spending, and I don't think she should get a day off it. Having said that, anybody who's a practitioner knows you get a reduction for good days off. So many days in prison, in which you didn't get in trouble in prison itself, accounts for some reduction in the sentence. 20 years is a big sentence. 20 years is not a sentence that is done at a camp in Texas, which was probably chosen for a couple of reasons. One, Texas is accommodating, and 2, whatever court was invoked might not be as friendly as a court if we left this where it was, either in Florida or New York. So these matters all relate one to the other because they're all acts against law. They're all lawless acts. And again, I want to go to Governor Newsom. He pointed out the fact that he was talking about Trump in a very specific way, but what he was saying was the rules don't apply. There are no rules for these guys. They do whatever they want. And we have to find a way to improvise that stays within our ethical code, but does not play us for saps rather. And the effect of that is to push back on Trump, to fight Trump. The bullies cannot be ignored. Bullies have to be punched metaphorically in the face hard and often. That teaches them something. And so what are we doing here? What we're doing here is we're sorting these things out. Now, people are pushing back. We need more to push back. We need more to say this is wrong. We need more to act upon it. And we need the kind of action that is created out of the chaos of someone who's ignoring all law. That is why we are where we are. And some people who just don't want to be so accommodating to this change. We should follow the rules no matter what. People like Trump count on us following certain rules. Now, my quote rule of thumb when somebody else is not following the rule of law or the law is to find those rules that allow us to do something. Unlike some, quote, revolutions to the far right, we still have judges, courts, many of whom and which are upset because they are applying the rules. That's terrific. We are having demonstrations in the street. We have to be very careful because Trump will seek to make that a basis for even more repression, militarily, physically, and so forth. We need to encourage the officers who are being asked to do things they were never trained to do as part of the black shirts and armed band that is Trump's minions, if you will, doing what he wants done by force. And everything he does is by force and coercion and by secret deals and playing to the fact that people need certain things and are prepared to trade off their own souls to get it. If there was ever a Faustian deal with the devil, this is the case. And unerringly, these kinds of cases come up in politics, and they come up in politics for this reason. We don't need to go over all the past people who have violated their oaths of office and cheated and done everything else. But the damage is so severe from this guy, we just can't let it go on. So those are a couple of my thoughts today, and maybe tomorrow I'll be able to be out on the trail and walk around again while addressing you on my phone. So all the best, be well, and we'll talk again tomorrow. Bye-bye.